This is the Motivated Business Show, hosted by me, Mark Terrell, the author of Motivated, the Reluctant Leader's Guide to Building a Business that Sets You Free. In my book, I share the 7-step process to get the measure of your business. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is an acronym that stands for Mirror, Evaluate, Action, Systemize, Unify, Review, and Energize. On each episode, I'll be chatting to a business owner about how they stay motivated and how they've got the measure of their business. So without further ado, let's find out who's joining me on this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Motivated Business Show with me, Mark Terrell. Today's guest I met in a group of trainers, and we have had lots of conversations around leadership and all those things that are important to team development. So I really am looking forward to this conversation. We've had a quick chat before we come on air, and there's lots of things that we can delve into with regards to team development, which is a shared passion of ours. So if you're joining us for the first time, this is the podcast that is connected to my book, and I should stick it on the screen there. So in my book, Motivated, I talk about 7 steps, and every now and again within the conversation, I'll drop in why the 7 steps are relevant and connect it to the conversation with regards to how it fits in. And so if you are interested in my book, you can get it either from Amazon in Kindle or in paperback form, or you can get it direct from my website. So it would be great to hear if you get that book and get some reviews. And if you are watching this live, then feel free to leave some comments. And if you're actually catching it on replay, please feel free to leave some comments. We'd really like to hear from you. And if there's any questions, then we will try to answer them. So without further ado, let's bring Clinton on to the show. Welcome, Clinton.
Hi there, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Right, before we get stuck into the topics, let's give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I'm Clinton Wingrove. My passion is productivity. How do you help managers realize the potential of their teams and transform their performance? And that's been a passion for many, many years. And given some of the figures released by the Office of National Statistics recently, which show that the UK productivity has been on a steady downward decline since the 1980s, I think it's one of the most relevant things organisations need to be thinking about. So I think the work that you do, Mark, particularly in terms of ensuring people are motivated, is quite key. We take a slightly different angle on it, which overlaps, which I think is why you and I have managed to gel quite so well.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's such a big topic that I think, we've all got our different ideas, and not one thing works for everybody. And that's the thing, isn't it? And when we're working with teams, I'm sure you realise that we have to adapt ourselves to certain people that don't quite fit into the model. And that's, again, part of leading a team, isn't it? So why do you think this is happening then? Why do you think that productivity and performance is going sort of downhill?
I think there's a systemic issue that underlies it, and I think there's some things that have arisen more recently. I think the systemic problem is, and I'm sure this is not a revelation for anybody, but in most organizations, we put people into management positions because they've been brilliant at absolutely something else. And I use a simple metaphor, which may sound a little bit childlike, but I say, would you find the best electrician and then ask them to come and fix your plumbing? And of course, people laugh and say that's stupid, and yet that's exactly what we do in many organizations. So typically in an organization, if you're a specialist in something, you will get extensive training. You will have had it before you took the job. You will get it on the job. You'll learn from your peers. But in management, frequently, you're lucky if you get a pre-management appointment training of any useful sort. You're put into the position, and then you may get 1 or 2 decent courses in the course of a year. So I think we have a fundamental problem. We've got to revisit the concept of dual ladders. We've got to revisit the approach, and we've got to prepare people for management much better before they go into role.
Mm.
More
That make,
recently, I think the problem is we've put an obsession on collaboration and on consensus. Um, and of course, COVID drove a lot of that. We've got technology now that makes it so easy to create teams and meetings. Um, so I think we now have the issue that a job that would have previously been done by one person who was an expert consulting and get input from others is now executed by a group of people sitting in meetings. So I think the two are coming together, and we've got a perfect storm.
yeah, it's interesting you say that because I was having a conversation with someone the other day about when you join a club and then you're asked to go on the committee. And we all know that committees never actually achieve anything unless you've got someone that's really leading and pushing things forward. And I've only had one experience of being on a committee, and that was a friend of mine asked me to join. He was very entrepreneurial, and it was it was a tennis club, and he had great ideas, and I was there just to help him. And I was absolutely shocked by the people that were there just to stop things happening, firstly, but then there's people just didn't ever make a decision. And I suppose that's what you're alluding to here, is that when you bring people together in a collaborative way, actually there's never really any sort of direction because everyone's got their own way and they never really sort of decide the right way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a whole variety of things. I mean, Harvey at George Washington University came across the Abilene paradox. Yeah, and it's something I see so often. And for those of you who don't know what the Abilene paradox is, basically what it says is you can take a group of incredibly intelligent, serious, well-intentioned people, and they will agree to do something that none of them agree with. Uh, and people laugh when I tell them about the Abilene paradox, but you can go out and Google it. There's lots of information out there. But in my experience, I see this time and time and time again.
Hmm.
Groups of people come to a consensus on something that at best one or two of them agree with, and frequently none of them agree with. That's just one example. So, yeah, we have a basic problem around how do we upskill managers before we appoint them? And then secondly, how do we help them to understand when does a task genuinely require teamwork and when does a task genuinely require individuals to go and do what they were paid to do? And I think it's a challenge facing lots of organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because not everything needs a team, like you say. A team is a combination of people that actually, when they come together, they're able to get more done than they would individually. So, if that isn't the case, then there's no real case to have a team in the first place, I guess. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, are we talking about what we really need here then is someone that is going to take the lead, the people that actually want to step up, take responsibility, set the direction. Is that lacking? Do you see?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you go back to the 70s, we had a pretty good understanding, I think, of what teamwork was. People like John Adair and so on covered lots of material. And there's some fairly solid requirements of what a good team needs. Clear goals. You need singular leadership, and at the moment we seem to have this view that everything seems to be consensus. It all needs to be egalitarian. At the end of the day, any group of people faced with serious challenges, which is what business is faced with right now, there are going to be instances where somebody's got to make the tough call, where somebody's got to make that difficult decision, where somebody's got to provide that piece of knowledge and expertise that the others don't have. So I think there's something about stepping back and saying, what do we really mean by teamwork? And we seem to have got hooked on the fact that it's having lots of people in a meeting, all with equal input, and we have to reach consensus. That's not how you drive things forward. And I think sometimes that can even be a contributory factor to some of the issues we're having around anxiety and well-being. People people are struggling with understanding what exactly is expected of them. Apart from going from to back meetings, but
Yeah.
what is it I'm actually expected to contribute?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a thing about people saying that people want freedom, which is true that people do want a bit of freedom. They want to have a bit of control over maybe the way they work, but also they are desperately needing is actually direction. And they
Yes.
want to actually also what I've been noticing more and more in my work with motivation is that they are wanting more stability and predictability. So you don't get predictability by just saying, well, just throwing it all into the hat and just seeing what comes out. You need someone who can set an intention. This is where we're going. This is what we need to achieve. How we do it is what we've got to decide. And you've all got your expertise. We bring you together because you've got expertise, not to change the direction, but actually tell us how we can get to where we need to go. Would that be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. One of the things we're doing when we're working with organizations on improving their productivity or improving their teamwork, um, we use a little acronym which is CARE. What people need is clarity. They want clarity. What do you expect of me? Yeah, in terms of what you want me to produce, how you want me to go about it, the development you want me to achieve, and what clarity around how you perceive my performance and my role. So clarity, and we know that clarity reduces anxiety, it reduces stress. Secondly, they want assurance, and particularly if they're working remotely, they want assurance that they're being thought about, they're being considered, that their input is valued, that people will protect their back, for example. Thirdly, they want recognition. Recognition for who they are and what they do. And we're finding people are now attending back-to-back meetings and nobody's even saying hello to them. They're just joining the meeting, they're silent in the background, they drop off, they join another meeting. And there's that lack of connection, which we know is occurring. Yeah, and then the E in care. So we've got clarity, assurance, recognition, and the E is empathy. People want managers and team members to demonstrate empathy, understanding of the situation, the circumstances, and the feelings that they've got. And I'm finding that applies to executives as much as it applies to people doing very routine, mundane jobs. They all want those four things: clarity, assurance, recognition, and empathy. And yet they're things that are relatively rare.
Yeah.
I get organizations say, oh, we've got clarity. We do our annual goal setting and they're all smart. And when you look at them, that couldn't be further from the truth. And I say, well, are people absolutely clear about what you're expecting of them next week? And they look at me as though I'm nuts. And they say, well, they've got their goals. And I say, yeah, that's not the same as having clarity around what you're expecting me to do tomorrow.
It's about what does good look like, isn't it? And so people actually can relate to that and know that they've done it. So this happens so often. I mean, actually, in our household, recently we had someone who didn't realise whether they were doing the right job or not. And the only time that they actually find out whether they are is when someone tells them that they're not, and they never know that they're doing the right thing. And so if you multiply that over an organisation, it's horrific, isn't it, what happens? And you talk about productivity. It's no wonder that people aren't performing at their best if they never know what their best is, firstly. And we know the power of feedback just being noticed. Was it William James said that the human beings, the one most important thing that they have in their life is that they want to be appreciated. So if when we go to work, that's the minimum we want, is to be appreciated.
Yeah, and it's so incredibly simple. Many years ago, I worked for a company that did a little bit of an experiment. There was a number of us in HR who were brought into a secret project, and the project was very simple. We were to wander around the building as we normally did, and whenever anybody said to us, "Hi, how you doing?" we were to respond with the most negative thing we could think of. Like, I shot the wife this morning, or I crashed the car, or I've had a terminal diagnosis. I mean, we were encouraged to be really brutal, and we were to record what people said. Over 2/3 of the time, people responded with, "Oh, fine," and carried on, because they hadn't listened. Yeah. And we frequently find that this happens. People are not actually getting recognition for who they are. So one of the things we often encourage people to do is say, if you're having a team meeting, make sure that you've recognized the people when they actually join. Yeah, if they haven't come on camera, ask them to come on camera. Uh, and I use simple examples, and I say to people, you know, how often when you go into the service station to pay for your petrol, does the person have a badge? And most people say, well, yeah, these days they all do. And I say, how often do you actually read that badge and say, thank you for serving me, Mark, I appreciate it? And people say to me, why would I do that? And I say, just try it once. And if you try it once, the smile you'll see is the smile you've just showed there.
Absolutely,
Because
absolutely. It doesn't take
90,
much.
99% of the time, when people read that name on the badge, they think that'll be useful if I need to make a complaint. But just imagine what it's like if people recognized you. Yeah, I used to travel a lot. Greta Thunberg would hate me because in my past career, one year I spent 147 nights in hotels. So you can imagine I traveled a lot.
Right.
But one of the
Yeah.
things I discovered was if you walk into a hotel and go up to the reception, read the receptionist badge, and let's say it's Julie, and say, Julie, thank you for checking me in. I wouldn't want your job for all the tea in China. I really appreciate you looking after me. You get free slippers, you get drinks vouchers. Now, I don't do it for that reason, but the smile you see on that person's face, because the vast majority of people who they deal with don't even acknowledge them by name, and a good percentage spend most of their time complaining.
And I
I
mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Aren't we great at noticing things that are wrong, but we're rubbish at finding things that are right, and that's the key. I mean, catching people doing things right is basically what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you alluded to your background with regards to HR, and I come across a lot of people in HR, and I sort of put them in two camps. One is the reactive HR who are trying to solve the problems that come from maybe poor management and all the other things that go on in the business, and then there's the proactive HR sort of people that want to prevent problems, and I guess you're in that camp, Clinton. I'm sure, obviously.
Yeah, I've often referred to myself as the HR anarchist, and in fact, I actually trademarked the anarchist logo with the HR in it instead of the A for anarchist. Um, but yeah, I'm a great believer, and this came from my training with 3M. I mean, I started my early career with 3M, one of the most fabulous companies in the world, even today. And they taught me a number of things. One is be positive. Another one is focus on the things that work. And another one is don't complain about things, fix them. Um, so yeah, I'm a great believer in that approach. And if I give you an example, I say to people I work on productivity, and I can see some people's faces tense up, and they go, "Oh, productivity is an evil word. That's going to create stress and anxiety. It should all be about well-being and so on." And my response is, have you ever thought why people are anxious and stressed? And they look at me and they say, well, what do you mean? And I say, look, and what I've discovered is a lot of people are anxious and stressed because of the lack of clarity around what's expected of them. They're anxious and stressed because most of the communication with them is about what they've done wrong rather than what they've done right. I don't suggest we should stop programs on well-being, stress reduction, building your resilience, and so on. But if we ran our businesses properly, if we gave people clarity, if we manage people well, we would actually have increased productivity and reduced triggers for stress and anxiety in the first place. And that just seems to me incredibly logical. And I'll be honest, sometimes I struggle to understand why people don't see that. You know, if you look at most organisations, I mean, there's a theory called Price's law, and I don't know if you've come across it, but it's staggeringly true. And Price's law says that in most organisations, 50% of the work is done by the square root of the number of people employed. Now, just think about that. What that says is if you've got a company of 100 people, 10 of them are doing 50% of the work.
Wow.
The bottom 50% of the employees do 10% of the work. Now, that sounds staggering, but do you know what? Organizations I've worked with and looked at, that is frighteningly accurate. And if we look at a lot of the work that was done in the 90s and the early 2000s on engagement, actually, if you look at that data, it tells you exactly the same thing. And
Wow.
but what I add to that is people know whether they're productive or not. People who are actually productive tend to be happier people. And we seem to have slipped into this theory that if you make a team happy, they'll be productive. That seems to be flawed. And in fact, one of the top orchestras did some research, and they found that when they came together, if there was a level of tension and anxiety, they produced better concerts than when they came together and everybody was happy and, hey, this is great, love, we're going to be playing this piece of music. What they found was happy orchestras produce poorer quality concerts than orchestras where there's a sense of tension. So it's really interesting if we take this and apply it into the workplace. We can do a lot more to increase productivity that would actually reduce stress, reduce anxiety, increase motivation. And, I think we're at a tipping point. I think, the financial crisis, global pressures on supply chains, I think companies are going to have to start looking at productivity. And of course, when they do, they're then going to claim that, oh, this was their idea in the first place, which is what we tend to do. Um, I think this is a really hot topic.
Yes. Well, I'm learning so much from this chat, Clinton, and thank you for sharing so much. I just want to go back to again about your HR background. You were involved with the HR software warehouse, but I understand you've got some reservation with regards to the sort of contemporary tech that's involved nowadays.
Yes, yeah. I used to be the CEO of an HR software house in the US for 12 years, and was a director of a similar company before that. We know that software goes through a number of phases. Firstly, we try and automate what we've always done. But of course, what we've always done manually is a suboptimal process because we didn't have the automation. It's almost chicken and egg. So if you automate what you've always done, you'll probably get a suboptimal output. What we tend to do then is to throw our hands up in horror and say, okay, let's ask the technologists what we can do. So of course, technologists, beaver away and create immensely innovative things, but of typically people who are brilliant at creating technology have never run a business themselves. So frequently, they provide us with great stuff that's fun, but it doesn't actually quite hit the button. So then we go through the third phase, which is where we say, hang on a minute, let's work together. Technologists, you tell us what could be done. We'll tell you what we need done, and we'll find a synergy of those, and we'll produce the ideal solution. And my problem is, I believe we are at the moment in the second phase with most HR technology, and particularly some of the collaborative tools. They are brilliant at what they do. The problem is that what we want to do? So in terms of my comment earlier, we're now in a situation where we've got so many tools that allow you to create meetings, to have chat groups, to send messages to each other, that we've forgotten why we wanted to do that in the first place. And we've now got people going from back-to-back meetings. Yeah, I think it was Harvard did the research pre-COVID where they found there were 11 million business meetings in the US per day, 74% of which failed to achieve their objectives if they had any. Just think about that. The research was done again last year. The number of meetings has gone up from 11 million a day to 29 million a day, over 150% increase, I think it is roughly. Yeah, and the number that failed to achieve their objectives has gone up from 74% to 77%. Now, why is that? It's because it's too easy to create meetings. You've got a button, it says click meet now. And then we've got all the messaging tools, the chat rooms. And we're at a position now where some interviews I conducted recently with a client, they said it's quite common now that people will send me an email, they'll send me a text message to say that they've sent me the email, and then they'll post a message in the collaboration tool, which might be Teams, Slack, or one of the others. So now, instead of one message, I've now got 3 messages. Yeah. Now you multiply that up. You know, the average professional is probably getting something like 100 emails a day. Yeah. The drain on time, which is productivity, but also the emotional demand that makes is staggering. So yeah, my question is, I don't question the technology, but we need to have people in management positions, and in particularly in HR, who are able to ask the question, what technology, what is technology capable of doing that we need, and how do we teach our people to use it effectively? And I believe at the moment we've become addicted. You know, the dopamine effect we get, we become addicted to these tools that are making us connect and interact and send messages to each other, and it's absolutely driving productivity down. Now, there is some people are saying, but we got collaboration, we're getting the benefits of that. Yes, we are, but I believe the balance is way out of line. The price we're paying is too high for the benefit we're getting.
Really interesting stuff. Right, Clinton, I'm going to just give you a time to just sit back as for a second. I want to come back to before we finish. I want to talk about Super Teams, which is the book you read. Sorry, written even. I've read it. You've read it. I read it. You wrote it. But before we do, there's just a few things I want to share, which I try to do on each of the podcasts with regards to the model that I share in my book. And we've talked a lot about understanding ourselves. Now, M.E.A.S.U.R.E is the first step. It's understanding ourselves. And if we're going to lead a team, we've got to understand ourselves, understand our behavioural style, motivations, character strengths. And once we know those things, we're far more aware of ourselves firstly, but also we see that there's other strengths that there might be things that we are not quite so strong on, which we need to have complemented within a team. So that's the key with regards to, particularly with the mirror stage. And I don't think a lot of people actually really understand themselves enough. I didn't when I was leading my team of 45. I certainly did not have enough self-awareness, let alone have the actual know-how with regards to how to lead a team. And the evaluation stage is key here. Is that evaluation is about understanding where we are and understanding where we want to be, and how do we then get from here to there, A to Z, or whatever you want to call it. And evaluate. I don't think a lot of people think about this enough to actually think about, well, where are we going, and also the most important thing is how do we communicate that to everyone in the organisation so that they're on the same page as us. So evaluation is key. And I just wanted to skip over to the motivational maps model, because I think, again, what we've been talking about here is key. What I've noticed is the director motivator is very lacking, in that people don't want to be in charge. They don't get energy from being in charge, so which is an issue. Because if you've got a whole team where nobody wants to be in charge, that's a challenge in itself. There is ways you can overcome that by making sure everyone got their own responsibilities. But when you haven't got someone that's really leading and wants to be in charge, then everyone's shying away. That's an issue. And also coming back to the need for security and stability, which is the defender motivator, it's becoming more and more important with regards to the work I do. It's coming in the top 3 almost every week. I'm seeing maps with high defender. They just want to feel they have predictability, security. And how do they get that? In most cases, it's communication, like you've been talking about, Clinton. showing the way, being clear about where are we going, clarity, and why am I doing this? Am I doing it correctly? And please give me some feeling of that I'm actually doing the right thing, and give me some feedback, which is often lacking. So just a quick interlude there. Any thoughts on what I said there,
No,
Clinton?
no, I think that's why I said right at the beginning, Mark. I think what you and I do overlap and complements, because yeah, that map describes a lot of the things I've been talking about, and I think if we address those, we can, as I said, I think we can help people to be significantly more productive, and as a result, I believe they will actually be triggered less in terms of anxiety and stress, which then becomes a self-fulfilling circle. Um, and I
Absolutely.
think at the moment we're in the other circle. We're allowing the anxiety and stress to be triggered. We're then trying to address it, which actually I think is fueling the circle overall rather than reducing it.
It's that
So I think
cause and
much
effect
of what
thing,
you
isn't it?
do is here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right, let's talk about your book, which is you co-wrote it. I'll get it on the screen. Super teams. So the all-important question before you go, Clinton, how do you define a super team?
Yeah, well, the original question was, and it's something most of us notice is, why is it you can take a group of pretty average people and they'll win the league, win the cup, and yet you can take groups of immensely talented people and all they seem to do is to butt heads? That was the original premise. Anyway, so what we then did was we decided to study not the difference between good teams and bad teams, because any idiot can tell you the difference between those. What we decided instead to look at is what's the difference between the teams that excel and the good teams. And when we say excel, what we mean is they consistently achieve their objectives, but they don't wait for somebody else to tell them to improve. They actually improve themselves. Yeah. And the other differentiating factor of a super team is people want to join it rather than leave it. So our definition of super teams is quite simple. They consistently achieve their objectives, they raise the bar themselves, and people fight to become a member of the team. And what we looked at is what differentiates them. And what we found was that there was basically five differentiators, all of which were around respect. In the super teams, people respected the organization that they worked for. They didn't have this, oh, it was better when Jack was here or whatever. Secondly, they respected the leadership as a concept, not just the individual leader, but they recognize that people above them have to make tough decisions. And if they make a tough decision, their job is to own that and implement it. Yeah, which means that they can inform those people, they can challenge them, but do what's required. That people respected the team, they didn't put themselves first, so they didn't have prima donnas. That they respected the work, yeah, and if there was work that didn't deserve to be respected, they got rid of it or found a way to improve it. And then lastly, we found that in the super teams, everybody finished the day feeling respected. And that was, and in fact, they're in an ascending order of significance. So that was the most significant. And then we discovered there were 7 clusters of behaviors that led to those 5 levels of respect. And just very quickly, it was recognition, empowerment, supportive feedback, partnering, expectations, consideration, and trust. And they're all clusters of behaviors which, no matter what your organization does, no matter what your competency framework is, they're clusters of behaviors that are very easy to learn, they're very easy to acquire, and if demonstrated, lead to those 5 levels of respect and lead to much higher levels of team performance. So that's basically what it came down to.
Brilliant. And if you
And
want
it's
to hear, if
probably
you want,
more relevant now than it was at the time.
well, absolutely, yes. And we come back to our original sort of conversation around productivity and performance. And, we need all what you've just said. All those elements are so important. And it's all in the book. So I highly recommend, Rich, get a book copy of Super Teams and get into the respect model, because even just, as I said before we come on air, just the word respect in a team is so powerful, isn't it? If you're going to go into a
Absolutely.
team that actually has a philosophy which is based on respect, isn't that a great place to start?
Yeah, yeah. One of the problems that COVID has triggered is we know that people working more remotely, having less face to face contact, the level of empathy we're experiencing is reducing. So natural levels of respect are dropping, which is why we see more trolling, more negativity on social media. So just becoming aware of that and saying, whatever we think about a person's values, politics, principles, skill, etc., there's still something about everybody that we can all respect. And if we all tried to do that, I mean, going back to your model of Motivate, I think we'd find everybody would experience a much higher level of motivation.
Thank you, Clinton. I've really enjoyed the last half an hour or so. It's flown by. Could talk with you
Yeah, lovely
for
to talk
hours.
to you again, Mark. Yeah.
Really appreciate giving up your time, and I hope everyone that's catches this has got as much value that I have. Because one of the things that I don't talk about is I have the reason why I have a podcast and the ones I've done in the past is I learn from my guests, and that's the key to me. It's one of the things that motivates me. So thank you for that. So,
Great. Lovely to chat to you, Mark.
and yes, hopefully we'll catch up very soon. So, farewell for now. Thank you again. So there we are. Don't hesitate to reach out to Clinton. You can see he's got a wealth of knowledge with his HR background and the work he does now, and highly recommend you getting a copy of Super Teams. There's such a good thing to base every team on, being respectful. And there's a model in there that you can use with your team. So thank you for listening. If you catch this on replay, don't hesitate to leave any comments, any questions for either of us. Just before we go, just a quick mention again to my book. You can get that book from Amazon or direct from my website. And if you do read it, then I would love your feedback. So that's this episode done and dusted. We will be back very soon with another episode. I hope you enjoyed it, but until then, have a great day. Thanks again.